This is a test video. We're going to be talking about the intro page for PhilosophyLive for 2021. So really, I'm just going to see if the audio and video works. I had no idea you had to record it on your camera and then upload it to YouTube. I thought YouTube had video software, but they don't. The first thing we're going to talk about is the old PhilosophyLive show. Doesn't look like I'm looking at the camera. I'm looking right at the screen, but then I can't see myself. This is fucking bizarre. So anyway, we'll see what it looks like when I replay it. We're talking about the old PhilosophyLive show, which was about 10 years ago. And most of you probably don't remember it, are too young, or weren't around when Stickam, Stickam, was the only medium for doing videos online, streaming. And because we were one of the few serious shows, people were doing their cat stories even back then, the majority of people. So because we were a serious show and we had seriously funny stuff on it also, and a really nice fish tank in the back, they would put us on the main page and we would get a lot of viewers. So some of you will remember we were a academic philosophy show that dealt with current events, that also, by the nature of our show and our personality and our format, were kind of funny. But it also revolved around the business, which was superfishstore.com. We shipped fish aquarium stuff to people. And it kind of started around the drama related to Superfish Store. Some of you are probably saying, what kind of drama could that be? You really have to trim your nose hairs before you're on camera. Let's be honest. I'm gonna have to get the exact right angle. My nose looks like it's 2 feet wide. So we're gonna try to keep that same format. We're going to try to have a philosophy show dealing with current events with a bunch of fish tanks in the background. But what we're also gonna do is answer questions, science questions, in a way that demonstrates our theory of knowledge. So if I just talk in the abstract about the theory of knowledge, you would probably say, wow, this is the boringest channel, stick a girl on there, which I will do. But I want it to also be interesting, and that's the way it was in the past. So we had current events, we had a little bit of philosophy, whatever that is, and we had girls, which created drama. And some of that drama got really funny. So that's the old show. It was in my old living room in a house I lived in, with a giant saltwater fish tank in the back. And we had 6 to 10 people that would consistently be on the show, 2 or 3 on camera at a time. And that was a joy. So one of the first theories we're going to talk about is that, the ideological format, and that is how we think we should present a show from an idea perspective, not necessarily from a visual perspective. And that is that we aren't going to rely heavily on marketing. And I've told people, especially nowadays, I don't really want to rely heavily on marketing. I don't want to brand the name for the show again, or my name, or something related to something I've written, in order to become more marketable. My theory has been, always has been, and still is, that if the ideas behind the show are good enough, they'll find an audience. And that the extensive, almost excessive marketing that you see today with websites and blogs and podcasts and internet TV is only necessary because the ideas they're presenting aren't that great. I kind of equate that to a self-help book. Self-help books are fads. They don't work at all, but they really become a waste of money and don't sell very well unless there's a real substantive reason for people to buy them. So to compensate for that, today, using the same useless self-help ideas, they overmarket. They do so much marketing, or they do marketing in such a creative way, which means which means they put a lot of energy into it. My teeth look huge. They do so much marketing so that they can get people. And it's kind of the old idea where enough people like it, therefore it must be likable. So many people are viewing it, therefore it must have some substance maybe that I don't know about and I need to find out. If a crowd is running towards something, people are much more likely to start running that direction. Unless they're running away from something, which is different. Which is might be what happens in this case. But the point is, we want our marketing to be the ideas. And I know that sounds naive, and it probably is. But I have seen examples, especially historically, where people that maybe shouldn't have been so popular became popular despite what would have been called marketing back then. My background is, I like to say, really just history. My degrees aren't in history. They're not even in philosophy, really, even though I did a bunch of undergraduate in philosophy, so it's part of a triple degree. And I also took a lot of graduate philosophy in order to teach, which would equate roughly to a master's degree in philosophy, but I don't have one. I do have advanced degrees, but they're in English. But to me, all degrees are degrees in history. And to some extent, they're all degrees in philosophy. And I have to end up saying this over and over again to pretty much everybody, that there is something called philosophy, even though now I've come to the belief that it's past its prime, overrated. There is a thing called philosophy that is a part of every degree. And that's why a PhD is called a PhD. So if you get a PhD in English, you're getting a philosophy degree in English. That's what the PhD stands for. To say that to everyone, no matter who they are, no matter how educated they are, and they always look at me with that look of surprise. This is one of my test looks for the new setup. Oh, the lighting's not right. No, your eyeballs are too big. So for 30 years, I've been teaching on and off. In graduate school, I was teaching. I taught after graduate school as what was called an IA, and then an instructor. And then I returned to teaching as a faculty member. And I was to set the record straight, because if anyone ever watches this show, they're going to wonder what my background is. And then if they don't like what I'm saying, they're going to want to make sure that that background is torn apart as much as possible, delegitimized. So my last stint teaching was probably the most legitimate, the most autonomy. I turned in my own grades, things like that. I was considered a per course faculty member, per course rather than a tenure track, rather than even a full-time 3 to 4 course non-tenure track. So intertwined with teaching, I did stand-up comedy for 5 years. I've written approximately 8 books. They're 8 books, but they really qualify as one. Only one was published by a publisher. The other 7 were self-published to delegitimize me even more. One of our main themes on the show related to what I believe is that teaching is unsystematic. If this is teaching, if we're ever doing anything that looks like teaching, certainly what I was doing was teaching. I believe unsystematic teaching is a better way to give other people information because they are unsystematic learners. So somebody that wants a very systematic, step-by-step, linear course or class in something is likely to learn a certain small percentage of the information you're trying to give them, but they're given the least amount of chance to learn much of it, and certainly to learn it on the level that we will be hopefully talking about. So unsystematic is something to keep in mind. So people always ask me what I believe. Students always say, what's your philosophy? Or do you believe in God? Things like that, these major things. What you find in philosophy, certainly in academic departments, is that philosophy teachers hate to answer that question. In a lot of cases, they refuse. Sometimes they have a pat answer that they've thought about, and they've said, I need to give something, and this is the best one I can. I'm kind of a utilitarian, I'm kind of a pragmatist, I'm kind of a realist. And when they say realist, they mean it in a different way than we're going to. So I've come to a kind of understanding of something that I believe is substantive, and it's substantive to the extent that I can provide a definition, whereas I feel like most academics can't. My history for this belief comes from the 18th century. It's a philosophical system called common sense. It's somewhat different than the common sense you hear about every day. Don't stick your hand on a fire. Don't date a girl with 6-inch heels. Those kinds of commonsensical ideas are a little different than what we're talking about, but just keep that in mind. I qualify by saying it's called critical common sense. It's not something that I invented. It's something I synthesized from people from the 18th century that are, for the most part, forgotten. So it's going to stand out, hopefully, and might even be more interesting, because if you do read philosophy, you are probably interested in philosophy as it has been in the past 250 years, and I call that philosophy hypercritical. So if I say HC philosophy, I'm talking about what you would read, Immanuel Kant. If I say critical common sense, it's something that I brought and other people have brought from the 18th century, but in a way that is a little more esoteric. Less people have heard of it. So then we're going to try to apply some of these ideas to real life, and we're also going to work on fish tanks. So I don't want this to go too long. I'm doing a trial, so I'm going to wrap it up. My name's Nick Jade. You've tuned into the first episode of Philosophy Live. Hopefully this makes it historically to a long-running history, a long-running channel, so that you can look back and say, wow, this is the first one. Look how stupid he looked. He was wearing a tank top. Thanks for tuning in.